Welcome. This is a video in my NIV Bible reading series. In this video, I will be reading through Leviticus chapter 14, and it's going to be continuing from chapter 13 and talk more about, uh, I guess, the Old Testament law about infectious skin diseases and the cleansing of it. Now, uh, quick disclaimer. You have the Old Testament and then you have the New Testament. In the Old Testament times, you had the moral law, civil law, ceremonial law, the ceremonial law, and perhaps the civil law. I still haven't researched that, but for sure the ceremonial law. But are not followed in the New Testament times. These are regulations and rules and stuff like that, and system that set by God, told to Moses, which he relayed within the tabernacle. That, and I guess other places, I guess whether it be like on a mountain or something like that. But basically, God relayed to Moses that the Israelites are to follow. Israelites, which were God's chosen people at the time. God chose the Israelites to and stuff like that. And the system that he put on them, which is the tabernacle system, the system of burnt offerings, and so and like unclean and clean food, and stuff like that. In the New Testament times, we do not have to adhere to the ceremonial law, and perhaps the civil law as well. I'd have to check me on that. Check me on the civil law, uh, which I'm not too knowledgeable on what all the civil law is. But yeah, definitely the ceremonial law we don't have to follow anymore. We don't build tabernacles. We don't do burnt offerings. Jesus Christ is the Jesus Christ was the most uh was the sacrifice that for our sins. So we don't have to do that anymore. And then we don't need a tabernacle to talk to God, because Jesus Christ. One of the things, Jesus Christ sacrificed himself, and and stuff like that. Jesus Christ came and as man, in the man, basically, God in the flesh, Jesus Christ, and stuff like that. So he is the mediator between the mediator. So we don't have to go have somebody go into the tabernacle, like a tabernacle like situation, like thing, and talk to God. Had talked to him, and he related to the people. Jesus is the mediator. We can talk to God, as in the New Testament times, we can talk to God and stuff like that. We pray and all that other stuff. You can talk to God. You don't have to. It's not the same as the Old Testament system. The Old Testament system of the tabernacle and all that stuff uh, pointed toward the system in the New Testament that we have. As far as I know, the prophets, there are many prophecies of Jesus's that show Jesus is coming, and in the Old Testament through its various prophets and stuff like that, and that's how it's all connected together. The Old Testament, you can't have a New Testament of the Old Testament. The Old Testament, is a precursor to the New Testament times, and the New Testament law that we follow. We still follow the Ten Commandments of the Old. I'm a Christian, which say a lot, because there are many different denominations in Christianity and stuff that I've just really recently been learning about, and I'm still not fully understanding of. But the point is that in modern New Testament times, we do not uh, follow the ceremonial law, and so like right now, like cleansing from infectious skin diseases and all that stuff, we don't have to. You don't have to burn up. Like we talked about in chapter 13. In chapter 13 it says you don't burn up the uh, clothing if it keeps spreading or something like that. I mean, honestly, you don't. I'd probably, you know, I definitely wouldn't keep clothing and stuff that has mildew on it and stuff. But yeah, anyway, I just want to make the disclaimer, and it's still this material is still important though, because it's still God's word. Back then, he did have those, like there's a purpose for these laws back then, and it's widely thought of that these old, like, these strict laws and stuff like that that were under the Jews and stuff like that, which are the laws or the Israelites and stuff like that. The laws were given that were given to by God to Moses and all that stuff. These ceremonial laws and stuff like that were they serve a purpose. The burnt offerings were burning like every day, pretty much constantly, and all these festivals and stuff to show the sin of the people, so that they were constantly aware, and all the specific laws about like clothing and stuff like that were it makes sense for, like, make the Israelites distinct people among all the surrounding ones and stuff like that, and that's a common rationale and stuff. Could be wrong, could be right. But I think that makes sense. But yeah, anyway, without just a disclaimer, and stuff like that. The God in the Old Testament and the New Testament, they are the same God. When this is the God that gave that what's it called? The God that I was talking to Moses. As far as I know, like, talking to him in the tabernacle, was the same God that that taught that when John was baptizing Jesus in the Jordan. It is this, and said, "I am. This is my son, for I am pleased." That is the same God, and Jesus is God. Jesus is part of what's known as, I guess, as far as the Godhead. You have one God, three people. I mean, three distinct, like, one God, like three persons. I've heard it also say, the one God, three people. So the way I kind of think of it is, because I thought, how is it that God can talk to Jesus if Jesus is God? It kind of, you have to. It's hard to wrap around your head around it, around my head around it at least. Like the way I think, it's like the Trinity. You have the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one being, three persons, and I kind of, maybe perhaps like it was like, cause like a lot of it. Like, here's the thing: is there are things we can't even understand. There are things that many we can't understand. Some things we just have to accept. And so I'm guessing, like, the way I try to think of it, perhaps it was the Father, the Father doing it, talking about that, in John, about Jesus when he was getting baptized, because Jesus is the Son of Man. He calls himself the Son of Man, and stuff like that. But yeah, so same point is same God, so it makes sense, one God, three persons, because God has, like, he can do whatever he wants. To think that God can be three personalities that can, or three God, one being, but, like, I guess three people or personalities or something like that that can independently that can act independently to talk to each other. That's not. I don't think that would be beyond God's ability, because God can do it. God has supreme power. He can do whatever he wants. The things that would be impossible to throw out is just not. I don't see that how that could be correct. That it could be impossible, and Jesus said, what it says is what it says, and that's just what it is. But anyway, yeah, let's just get into Leviticus chapter 14. The Lord said to Moses, "These are regulations for the diseased person at the time of his ceremonial cleansing. When he is brought to the priest is to go outside the camp and examine him. If the person has been healed of his infectious skin disease, the priest shall order that 2 live clean birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop be brought for the one to be cleansed. Then the priest shall order Let one of the birds be killed over fresh water in a clay pot. He is then to take the live bird and dip it, together with the cedar wood, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop, into the blood of the bird that was killed over the fresh water. 7 times he shall sprinkle the one to be cleansed of the infectious disease, and pronounce him clean. Then he is to release the live bird in the open fields. It is difficult. The person to be cleansed must wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and bathe with water. Then he will be ceremonially clean. After this he may come into the camp. He must stay outside his tent for 7 days. On the 7th day he must shave off all his hair. He must shave his head, his beard, his eyebrows, and the rest of his hair. He must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water, and he will be clean. On the 8th day he must bring 2 male lambs and 1 ewe lamb, a year old, each without defect, along with 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. The priest who pronounces him clean shall present both the one to be cleansed and his offerings before the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Then the priest is to take one of the male lambs and offer it as a guilt offering, along with a log of oil. He shall wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. He is to slaughter the lamb in the holy place where the sin offering and the burnt offering are slaughtered. Like the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is most holy. The priest is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall then take some of the log of oil, pour it in the palm of his own left hand, dip his right forefinger into the oil in his palm, and with his finger sprinkle some of it before the Lord 7 times. The priest is to put some of the oil remaining in his palm on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on top of the blood of the guilt offering. The rest of the oil in his palm the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, and make atonement for him before the Lord. Then the priest is to sacrifice the sin offering and make atonement for the one to be cleansed from his uncleanness. After that, the priest shall slaughter the burnt offering and offer it on the altar, together with the grain offering, and take atonement for him, and he will be clean. If, however, he is poor and cannot afford these, he must take 1 male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved, to make atonement for him, together with 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, a log of oil, and 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, which he can afford, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. On the 8th day he must bring them for his cleansing to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting before the Lord. The priest is to take the lamb for the guilt offering, together with a log of oil, and wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. He shall slaughter the lamb for the guilt offering, and take some of its blood, and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest is to pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand. Some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand, and with his right forefinger sprinkle some of the oil from his palm 7 times before the Lord. Some of the oil in his palm he is to put on the same places he put the blood of the guilt offering, on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The rest of the oil in his palm the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before the Lord. Then he shall sacrifice the doves or the young pigeons which the person can afford, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, together with the grain offering. In this way the priest will make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the one to be cleansed. These are the regulations for anyone who has an infectious skin disease and who cannot afford the regular offerings for his cleansing. Now we're going to get into cleansing from mildew. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when you enter the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as your possession, and I put a spreading mildew in a house in that land, the owner of the house must go and tell the priest, I have seen something that looks like mildew in my house. The priest, is to order the house to be emptied before he goes in to examine the mildew, so that nothing in the house will be pronounced unclean. After this, the priest is to go in and inspect the house. He is to examine the mildew on the walls, and if it has greenish or reddish depressions that appear to be deeper than the surface of the wall, the priest shall go out the doorway of the house and close it up for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest shall return to inspect the house. If the mildew has spread on the walls, he is to order that the contaminated stones be torn out and thrown into an unclean place outside the town. He must have all the inside walls of the house scraped, and the material that is scraped off dumped into an unclean place outside the town. Then they are to take other stones to replace these and take new clay and plaster the house. If the mildew reappears in the house after the stones have been torn out and the house scraped and plastered, the priest is to go and examine it, and if the mildew has spread in the house, it is a destructive mildew. The house is unclean. It must be torn down, its stones, timbers, and all the plaster, and taken out of the town to an unclean place. Anyone who goes into the house while it is closed up will be unclean till evening. Anyone who sleeps or eats in the house must wash his clothes. But if the priest comes to examine it, and the mildew has not spread after the house has been plastered, he shall pronounce the house clean, because the mildew is gone. To purify the house, he is to take 2 birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop. He shall kill one of the birds over fresh water in a clay pot. Then he is to take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird, dip them into the blood of the dead bird, and in the fresh water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall purify the house with the bird's blood, the fresh water, the live bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet yarn. Then he is to release the live bird in the open fields outside the town. In this way he will make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. These are the regulations for any infectious skin disease, for an itch, for mildew in clothing, or in a house, and for a swelling, a rash, or a bright spot, to determine when something is clean or unclean. These are the regulations for infectious skin diseases and mildew. All right. Oh man. Ah. Ah. Starting to lose my voice. Very tired. Read like four, four, four verses, 4 chapters in one session. Because I bulk record right now. Because I don't got time to record really during the week. I can only record and upload and all this stuff really during my days off. Oh man. Alright, anyway, yeah, that'll be the end of the video. If you have any comments or questions or anything like that, please put it down in the comment section below, and I'll be happy to, if I see your comment, I'll be happy to engage with you. Anyway, alright, I'm out.